What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York. We just wrapped up an awesome interview with Jungle Rot and Havoc. We are on a roll. We are back at St. Vitus, and today we are here with one of New York's own, Extinction A.D. Thank you all for being here.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's so awesome to have you here. Your latest record is Decimation Treaty, right? Yeah. And the record is what I like to call a thrasher piece. It's a brutal thrash, death metal, whatever the hell you call it record. How was the making of it so far, or the making of it?
The making started, I guess, we started writing these songs in 2014. Wow. We're always ahead of the ball. By the time we did our first EP, we had our first full length written, and we were writing stuff for our second full length. By the time we started recording our first full length, we had our second full length written and half of a third. So we have our second full length out now. Like I said, we started writing that as early as 2014, and we have another 2 records written right now.
Wow.
But so by the time we went to record the record, some of those songs, some of them were new-ish, but some of them were as old as 3.5 years at that point. So the actual recording part was, we just went in there and banged out these songs that we had already known for quite a while. It's just a matter of come up with these last-minute things. You mold it in the studio a little bit, and let's try this out, let's try that out. But for the most part, it was essentially we were in and out. I think we took 6 days to record the whole record.
That's fairly quick.
Yeah.
Now, being that you've had these songs since 2014, between the time that they were written and recorded and mixed and everything, did any changes occur?
Oh, of course, yeah. Not major changes. But, sometimes you add a pause here and there. You realize a song is way too fucking indulgent. And you cut out 2 minutes. Should I not say fuck?
Oh, you could say it as much as you can. This is New York, man.
Yeah, right. You do a little bit of editing, especially vocally. You realize that, this thing I did on the demo is terrible and I can't sing like that. Or, little variations. But for the most part, they usually wind up staying relatively true to the initial demo. Everyone's got to have their input, so I might write a song and demo it, and then once it goes through everybody else's filter, it changes a little bit. Or, some other member might write a song and it goes through everybody else's filter.
Okay. Anything you'd like to say through your experience?
I wasn't involved in the recording process.
Oh, really?
For this record, so
He's new to
I'm the newest member.
Oh, so really, you're the new guy. So, being that you are the new guy, did you kind of?
Well, I'm not the new guy. I've been a fill-in guy, and I've been playing with these guys forever. So,
awesome.
The transition is very easy.
Okay. Being that you fill in or whatever, do you kind of have to adjust on how you play with Extinction A.D. as opposed to another project?
No. Rick and I especially have a very similar background and taste, and we pretty much are on the same page as far as what we want the band to be.
Awesome. Now, from seeing you guys play before, I've seen you guys with Crowbar, and then I've seen you guys play with, some of New York's finest, whether it be Eternal Bleeding or Artificial Brain or any of those bands. You guys have a death metal sound to you. There's a thrash metal sound to you. You've played with Crowbar. That's like a sludgier style of metal. Do you notice maybe depending on what crowd you're playing in front of, maybe a different reaction to your music?
Not as much as I would think. What it is? Regardless of what classification we fall under, or what type of show we're playing, we're only capable of being ourselves. So no matter, we've done some real fucked up tours, as far as there's our 3rd tour with Havoc, and it's well, that makes perfect sense. We're both, modern, thrashy, heavy metal, Then we did a tour with From Autumn to Ashes, who's, a early 2000s metalcore band. On that same tour, we were out with Hawthorne Heights. It's what the fuck is that, But it was cool, But it was should we cater our set list? Not that anything we have would really make sense with either of those bands anyway, but it's we're on this tour with these different bands to have different types of sound. So no matter who we're out with, or what show we're playing, we just go up there and play our songs. And, when we play the songs live, we have, a certain energy, whether there's, 100 pop punk kids there, or 4 metalheads, or 1,000, hardcore guys, or whatever the fuck. We do what we do, and you can kind of just put us anywhere. And there's a reaction change, of course, but it's never really a focus of ours, what the reaction is. If we can connect with people, that's what's important. But we try to connect with people through what we're doing, regardless of where they're coming from. And sometimes it's not as different as you would think. You know, like last night we played Philly. It was, you know, us, Jungle Rot Havoc, and a local, you know, metal band. I don't really know exactly where they would fall in classification-wise, but just another metal band. And it was, you know, tons of, you know, mayhem. You know, then we've played shows, like I said, with Crowbar, which is an older crowd. You know, there's not going to be as much moshing and circle pitting. But at the same time, it's like, hey, we get up there, like, let's have a good time. You know, you want to pound your fist? Pound your fist. That'll be cool. You know, you want to bang your head? Bang your head. And it's cool to get different types of crowds into a specific thing. Absolutely. You know, a thing like playing with, you know, pop punk bands or emo bands, whatever. And for all intents and purposes, like, all right, you saw a emo band, then you saw a metalcore band. For the next 30 minutes, you're at the heavy metal show. Do your first circle pit. Like, I don't know what a circle pit is. And, you know, sometimes I'll fuck around with people and I'll explain to them. You know, I'll talk to them like they're kids, but it's a joke.
Yeah.
You know,
You're going to get the same show from us regardless of who's in front.
Which is good, you know, that people kind of leaving. A lot of people think that when you leave your fans knowing what to expect, it's going to get boring after a while. But in the end, if people just want a good show, they'll get a good show. And that's what you could get with Extinction A.D.
Yeah. You know, like I said, the whole thing is about connecting with people and sharing an energy, you know, where, you know, the way we are and the point we're at with not just our bands, but our lives, like, every day we get to play is a privilege. So if we get up there, you know, whether it's, like I said, a couple of kids who hate metal or a full crowd of people who love everything that we love, you know, we're going to give it the same energy because we're going to have a good time. Yeah. You know, what I find is you give it that energy, you know, people are going to give that energy back to you, hopefully. Yeah. You know, and so like, from that point of view, we're going to do our thing regardless. If people get into it, awesome. Yeah. You know, if they don't, then, you know, fuck them.
You know, you did a show recently with our mutual friends in Spotlights, and you know, Spotlights, I mean, is like they're a lot of. Sorry, Chris, Mario, and Sarah. I know you don't consider it this way, but to me, they're like a hardcore shoegaze band almost, and and you're like playing with their fans, and I gotta say that's a killer lineup.
Yeah, that was actually a really fun show. Yeah. I think there was some locals on that show, I'd assume, right? Was there
a couple?
Because that was in Kansas City. Yeah. So I think there was a couple of locals, and then they played, you know, and they're super slow and poundy and just loud and lots of low end. And, you know, they're playing to their fans and our fans. And it's kind of like, oh, people are digging it because it's good, regardless of where, you know, it falls under genre-wise. And then we play, and we're playing super fast, you know, super loud and aggro, and our fans are into it. And then their fans are like, oh, that's cool. I'm going to run around in a circle, too.
Awesome.
And, you know, it's cool. And it was, you know, of course, we've known Enriquez for 1,000 years, but we never met Sarah and Mario, so that was cool. We got to hang out and, you know, trade shirts and have a good time. And they're actually playing on Long Island tonight.
Yep, with Paul Bear. They just played here last night.
Yeah.
Now, as we were talking about, one reason why I really wanted to speak with you guys is because being that you guys are a New York-based band, Long Island, I mean, Long Island and New York almost kind of have their own scenes, but we'll just merge them together right now because Long Island having Moontooth, but also having Artificial Brain, you know, and then Malignancy, Immortal Suffering, Internal Bleeding. You know, in fact, we interviewed Chris from Internal Bleeding, and he was wearing your shirt.
Nice. Yeah, and I just spoke to him 10 minutes ago. He's like, "When do you play?" I need to stop in New York City. I was like, "You'll be here in time. You'll be fine."
Yeah. But I was curious too, as a band who kind of started in the Long Island, New York scene, what your take on the scene is.
You know,
you have that look.
Yeah. To be honest, like, I feel like there's bands and there's friends, but as far as a scene goes, I personally don't feel like there's a scene. And I mean, that could be just me being old and weathered as opposed to, like, young and hopeful. You know, when I was younger, it was like, oh, we're friends and we play music. It's this great scene. But, and it may or may not have been that when I was younger with, you know, youth kind of rose-colored glasses and all that shit. So I don't ever mean to be negative about it, but it, you know, I don't feel like, oh, you know, any one of these 10 bands plays and all of these people are going to be there. To me, that's what a scene is. Or like, you know, this local band puts out a record. Of course, you're going to, you know, they're going to meet up with these other bands. We're going to have a big, you know, party of a bunch of friends hanging out and playing music. I don't personally think it's like that. You know,
But to each his own. You know, like I personally think that there's an awesome scene here. But you know, when I tell people from outside that, like I tell them, oh, it's an awesome scene in New York City. But then they expect that the second they cross the George Washington Bridge, it's gonna look like Ozzfest.
Yeah.
And
Yes, and that is just not
It is not like
not
that.
the case. And you know, maybe it's the oversaturation. You know, so maybe it's almost like X amount of bands makes a scene. Too little, you don't have a scene. Too many, same thing. It's almost there's too much. So it, you know, if there's 6 shows a week, you know, there's only so many people to go.
quality over quantity. right?
Exactly. And that's not even to say that just because there's an oversaturation, they're not all quality bands. You know, but that's just the way I view it as I've aged a bit.
Yeah. And being that you've played in multiple bands too, from both like the New York City and Long Island scene, I'd imagine it's been like a completely different vibe and environment as well, right?
I mean, I suppose so. The idea of like there being like this scene or whatever, I haven't even thought about that since I was 20. You know, like I feel like we're a band from Long Island. The bands I've played in previously are bands from Long Island, but I don't feel this like need to latch onto a scene or an idea of that either.
Okay.
Especially us being we are a Long Island band. It's not like when we play a show on Long Island, it seems like, oh well, this is going to be a bigger show because it's a home show.
Yeah.
Every so often, our last headline show on Long Island was awesome, but I feel like that might have been because of the timing of the record coming out, the bands, the support bands we had, which, in a way they were all friends of ours. We customized the lineup to our liking. But even that, it was like, all right, we're fucking around with friends. It's going to be a good time. We have, 100 and change people there. And it's like, oh, it's like a big party and we're playing music. But whether that means like, oh, well, next time we play, little Mark, who came to see the first band, is like, oh, I'm part of this scene now. I need to see all these bands. Hopefully that would happen. I would love it. I'm not trying to say like, hey, this sucks, that sucks. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's just, but like, I feel like it's also just when you're older, you don't view it the same as when you're younger. I've never been one of those like, well, back in my day things were better. It's not the case.
Thank you.
It's how you view it when you're younger, and that's not just music. That's Star Wars. That's professional wrestling.
That was like an important view to have when you're younger because it gives you like a sense of like some stability or some bullshit. But we don't fucking need that now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and I appreciate the honesty about it. AJ from Fire from the Gods, he started in New York City, and he had his constructive feedback on it as well. So it's great that a band that is right now like touring with a bunch of other bands has some stuff that maybe people can kind of look to and whatever.
Yeah, and like I said, I never mean to be negative. Hopefully it doesn't come across negative. I would love, I did booking for years and years and years. And I would have loved if, like, I am doing a metal show every single Wednesday, if I saw, like, a progression of, like, oh, well, the first couple of shows, there was 10 people, 15, 20, 30, and then 6 months in, like, well, I just go every Wednesday because I know I'm seeing 3 metal bands, like, and there's 100 people. And it's like, well, that didn't happen. And then I booked in a bigger club where it's like, we get the touring bands, and it's important to me when it's like, oh, there's a tour package of 2 or 3 bands. Let's get at least 2 locals on the show. And I don't even think it's like, oh, you need to sell tickets or you need to be able to draw this many people. How are those bands supposed to draw that many people or sell tickets and not just, be paying to play if they don't get on a show with 2 or 3 other touring bands that are bringing people? That's what feeds a scene to me, and that's what Long Island's lacking. It's almost like when a tour package comes through, if you want to get a local on the show, they have to be kind of established already. And it's like, well, if they're already established, they don't really need that push. Don't get me wrong, like, an established local band playing with touring bands makes a great show, and that's awesome. I don't even know if we deserve the term of established, but I mean, we've opened shows here where there's been touring bands, and it's like, all right, well, we're good for a few people. But the thing is, like, we're still doing it, so to me, I feel like, oh, we need the push to play with touring bands, even when we're not on tour. But there's other bands, I know because, like I said, I've been booking, and I try to get all these different bands on these different shows, and sometimes it's like, well, why are you putting that band on? They're not, who are they going to bring? It's like, well, how are they ever going to bring anybody if they don't get in front of this touring band?
That Crowbar show, I mean, you had Sunlord, you guys, and Artificial Brain. Those are 3 very different bands from Crowbar, and you guys seem to have gotten the...
Awesome.
Yeah.
So awesome. Not only did we all, everybody sounds different, everybody, brought in a few people, but when it really comes down to it, we're all playing the Crowbar's crowd. And it's like, well, hopefully the Artificial Brain fan will like Extinction A.D. Hopefully the Extinction A.D. fan will like, Artificial Brain. Hopefully all Crowbar's fans will like, all 3 of the locals bands. And that, to me, is like, all right, so maybe next time the 3 of us can play with 2 other locals and not have Crowbar, and we'll have a similar size crowd. To me, that's the building of a scene. So who knows? I mean, we may even find that out tonight. Maybe instead of it just being Extinction A.D. playing to Jungle Rot and Havoc's crowd, it's Jungle Rot and Havoc playing to Extinction A.D.'s crowd as well. And
It'll happen.
I hope so. I don't know if I have a weird point of view on it, because like we're so concentrated on, hey, let's go up and have fun and just fuck it,
That's sometimes the best method to have.
I mean, to be honest, after all the years that we've done it, like I said, we've been in like 5 other bands together throughout over the past 18 years. So it's like, it got to the point where anytime we were in a band where we kind of like, oh, this show's going to be good on its own, like because of us. And it's kind of like, you take that punch to your ego when it's like, oh, we're going to play to 100 people of our own fans. And it's like 20 people show up and you're like, But I mean,
Humbling.
yeah, instead of that, like we went into this band from day one. Like I said, even though he was kind of like a fill-in guy, now he's the main guy. He's has been a part of the band since day one also. But we started the band from day one of like having fun and just fucking hanging ass up there is what's most important. If people like it, awesome. If people don't like it, we're gonna have fun and just go and fuck it one way or the other. And if it gets to the point where we get to go on tour, hey, that's rad. And then it's like, that's just kind of the perspective we've had from the beginning. And we've been on tour, since we started, which was like 5 years ago, essentially. And we just push it as far as we can. And hopefully, we get a bigger and bigger draw every time we go anywhere. I pay more attention to it in New York because this is where we're from. But because I pay more attention to it, obviously I'm more critical of it. But, I love to be wrong. And not just in that point of view, across the board. Because when you're wrong and you can admit it, and I've been wrong so many times, spent, probably 34 years of my life never admitting I was wrong. So the last 4 years of my life, I love to be wrong because I learned from it. And, when you learn from something, especially in music, it makes you better,
Absolutely. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time.
Oh, of course. Man.
Yeah,
Thank you for having
just now that your latest record, Decimation Treaty, did I say it right? Or
Decimation Treaty.
I went to art school, not literature. But
At least you went to something.
But now that that's been out for a while, could we be expecting any new music from Extinction A.D. or any up and coming tours?
Tours we're always working on. Nothing we could say yet for reason A, B, and C. Music, like I said, we're essentially over 2 albums in.
We're ahead of the game for sure.
We're always ahead of the game, So we have tons and tons of music ready to go. Now with Tom full time on the bass, we have this lineup that's just ready to fucking go and crush all the time. And that's both, on the road, at home, at the practice space, in the studio, So, we go through these little waves, because it's hard to stay afloat when there's so many. Like I said, there's like a saturation, but it's kind of like we don't want to stop. You know what I mean? Like we want to smash things, not be smashed. So.
Oh my God, that is the best slogan for any band. Please trademark that.
We're working on trademarking hanging ass.
Yeah, we're gonna put a TM on hanging ass, so maybe I'll put an R in a circle around. What'd I say? We want to smash things, not be smashed.
Yeah.
There it is.
Better than kill or be killed. I've heard that too many times. But thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Everybody, we are here with Extinction A.D. Catch them on their tour with Havoc and Jungle Rot. Be sure to pick up their newest record, Decimation Treaty, and we'll see you next time on Heavy New York, everybody.